Hi everyone. In this video I want to talk about promoting a server to domain controller. Once again, I've done that in the last video, but there was some glitches which I would like to correct here. So this is a brand new server, Windows server. This is a brand new server. I've just installed it. And server, you install server just as you install Windows 10, the client computers. Like I explained in the last video, I explained why do we need a server. So I won't be going through that this time. I just want to go straight to how do we promote a server to a domain controller. So in order to start that, when you have just installed a server, this is what you're going to see. So you are going to see the dashboard, which is what we are looking at right now. You are going to see the local server here, and you can see the local server says I'm in the work group right now, and I've named my computer, my server, I've named it. So in order to name your server, because when you've just installed it, the name is going to be convoluted. So all you have to do is to rename your server by clicking on that convoluted name, click on change. By now you should know how to change the name, and then this is where you're going to see the convoluted name of your server. So you can just change the name to whatever you want it and click on OK, and your server will restart itself. And that's that about that. So you can see it says it's in a work group. So we are going to change this to a domain. Okay, so instead of a work group, we're going to change it to a domain network. So I think I need to explain that also, because I haven't spoken about this before. So when we talk about network, so your computers are end devices. They can be joined to different networks. So we have the one we call the home network / private network. So home network or private network is the network that we all use in our house. Okay, so the other one is a work group, which is the one our server is on now. So work group simply means that we can have 2, 4, 5 servers that are connected together, working together in a work group, and that's why it says work group. So you have about 10 computers, and then they are client computers, and all your client computers are all in the same network, and they are able to share resources. So if there is a folder on one, I know that the other 9 can access that folder. If there is a printer on one, the other 9 can access that printer. So that's what work group means. And the last one is the domain. So if you are going to be working for a company, you are going to be using a domain network. So a domain, when you add a computer, when you add your devices to a domain, that means you have a domain controller. So, and the work of a domain controller, I've said I'm not going to do this, but I'm actually doing it. So the work of a domain controller is to authenticate, authorize, and then account for who is accessing the system. So authentication simply means that all your users in a domain, so say my company or your company or HSBC, name every company in the world, all those big companies, they have a domain controller. In the domain controller, they are going to create a username and a password. So every of their staff, their workers, when they come in to work in the morning, they need to log into the computer with the username and the password. That's authentication. Authorization is when the user then logs into a computer. Say the user logs into a computer, what can he see? What can she see? What can he access? What can she be doing on the computer? Those things that the user is able to do, the staff is able to do on any computer is logged onto, that is authorization. Because with that user's account, with that user's username and password, you have given that user the privilege to have access to some folder. That's authorization. And accounting is making sure the domain controller will be keeping account of what each user have accessed. Say a user called Aziz access a folder in the IT department, so it is the domain controller will keep that information that Aziz accessed it, and everyone that accessed that folder, the IT folder, the domain controller keeps information of what they have done on that folder. So if someone deletes a folder, the domain controller would keep the what's it called, account for that, would have information about who is done what, who is changed it, who is modified a folder. And that's what domain controller, that's what it is for. It is for accounting, it is for authorization, and it is for authentication. So these are the three groups you have in Windows 10 or Windows Server. So you can either be connected to home, work group, or domain. But we are dealing with domain network here. I think you know that. Everything I've been talking about ever since I've started this video is about domain network. You working for a company and you being the company's IT administrator or infrastructure manager or IT technician or IT analyst or first line support or desktop support. Those are the titles that they give this job. So let me go back. So here I'm back to my video. So I'm talking about work group. So we are going to, because it's going to be the domain controller for our company, we have to change this from work group to a domain. And you can right now see remote management is enabled. We are going to talk about this later in this video, in subsequent video. Remote desktop, all that, I'm going to talk about that. But the basic things I just want to show you is to see that once you install a server, you need to change the name, give it the name you want it to the name, like home DC2, home this, whatever you want to give it, or the name of your company. You know, there's a convention, naming convention, that every company follows. You are going to get to know that when you start working. So work group, I've mentioned that. Then if you look at what it says Ethernet here, you can see that it says IPv4 address assigned by DHCP. IPv6 is enabled. So I just want to talk about the IPv4 for now, forget about IPv6. So IPv4 address assigned by DHCP. DHCP is Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, and I'm going to explain that with time also. So what DHCP means, the job of a DHCP is to assign IP address automatically to your computers. So say you have 1,000 computers. You can't be going or attending to each and every computer and adding your IP configuration. So with DHCP, that job is done automatically for you. So we are going to also, because this is going to be our domain controller, we are going to learn about how do we deal with this. So if we go to all servers, I'm just showing you the environment, how a server looks like when you've just installed it. So all servers. So if you have more than one server right now in your company, right now in my company, I'm just starting, I'm just developing or creating this infrastructure. So I have just one, and you can see it says I have just home DC2. And when you install a server, this comes with it. The file and storage services comes with it immediately. So that's all I just want to explain, tell us about. Now let's start doing something. So if you see where it says add roles and feature, so if you want to promote a server to a domain controller, the first thing, a new server to a domain controller, the first thing you have to do is ensure that you have renamed your server. The name shouldn't be convoluted. Okay, so after renaming it, even if you haven't renamed it, it's fine, but make sure you rename it and you restart your computer if you do. So if we go back to, where was I? So add roles and feature, and this is what we use to add roles. So on this server, we can add as many roles as we want. We can make this server our domain controller. We can make this server our DHCP server. We can make it our DNS server. We can make it our file server. But what people tend to do is to not put so much on one server, to not add too much rows on the server. Or so that makes your server to work effectively and very fast. So say you have this one server that I have here, and I installed about 10 rows on this server. So say I installed print row, printer, I want this to be my print server, I want this to be my DHCP server, I want this to be my DNS server, I also want this to be my domain controller. That's a bit too much. And also I want this to be my file server. That's a bit too much for this server, and your server will work, but it's going to run slow. So what people tend to do, what administrators tend to do, is to install one row on a server. So if you are going to install more than one row, you must make sure that the hardware and the specification of your server is very high, so that it can do what you want it to do. So this is where we add row. So say add other servers to manage. We are going to do all this, but I'm just introducing you to what this means. So if we click on that, say we have more than one server right now, we can add it there. And you can see we can't actually do it for now because this is not a domain controller yet. So let's go and do that. So to promote this server to a domain controller, we need to install a role. So if I go to manage, add roles and features, you can see I can close this. I can as well click on here, add roles and features, and then I'll click on next. Please make sure when you are doing this, you read everything here. I've done this so many number of times, so I don't need to read it again. I'll just click on next, and you can see saying the administrator account has a strong password. It says before you continue, verify the following tasks have been completed. The administrator account has a strong password. Make sure if you are the administrator, you have a secured password. Network settings such as static IP address are configured. So in order to install domain controller, in order to promote a server to a domain controller, make sure that domain controller has a static IP address, and there is a reason for that. When we get to video where I'm going to talk about DHCP, I'm definitely going to talk about that. Then the most current security updates from Windows Update are installed. So is your domain controller that will control everything you have, every object you have. So by objects, I mean your desktop, your laptop, your printers, your other servers. So you need to make sure that this server is updated every now and then. So let me click on next, and now it says, what do I want to do? I want to install role-based or feature-based installation. So if you want to do remote desktop services installation, you can as well do that, but for now we are doing role-based or feature-based installation. So I'll click on next, and here you can see the name of my server. Yeah, you can see it there, and you can see right now that my IP address is 169. So I haven't issued or statically given an IP address to this server yet. So it's getting 169. I'm going to explain that with the DHCP install video later also. So I'll click on next. And here I want to install. These are all the roles you can install on the server. So we can make this one server everything we see here. We can make it Active Directory Certificate Services, and you can read the description of what each roles are doing here. This is the DHCP, and Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol server enables you to centrally configure, manage, and provide temporary IP addresses and related information for client computers. So, and you can see DNS here, domain name system. You can always read what they do, and you can see there's a lot we can make this server to be. We can make it a web server as well, but for now what we want to do is to install Active Directory Domain Services, which is this. And if you read this, it says Active Directory Domain Services stores information about objects on the network and makes this information available to users and network administrators. Active Directory Domain Services uses domain controllers to give network users access to permitted resources anywhere on the network throughout a single logon process. So if you understand this very well, what this is saying is with Active Directory, every object. So let's say you have a printer in your network, you have server, file server in your network, you have application server in your network, and you have all the whatever. Just think about anything like that. You have them in your network. Any user that you had, and you give a username and a password using the domain controller, would have access to all those things, provided that you've given that user account permission to access them. So it brings everything all together, so people don't have to struggle to get to access resources. So we are going to check this box, and when I check that box, this comes up. So when you want to install Active Directory, you can see add features that are required for Active Directory domain services. So all these features are required. So all I have to do is say add features. Then I'm going to click on next, and I'm going to click on next, and you can see if I go previous, it's checked this by itself. Group policy management. These are one of the things that comes with Active Directory domain services. So if I just click on next now, and you can see this is just explanation telling you things. Please try and read them next when you are doing your practice. So next I'll click restart the destination server automatically if required. So what I'm just saying to my server now is, after installing this rule, Active Directory domain services, sometimes some rules when you install them requires that you restart your server, and some rules don't require it. So what I've just said is, if this is one of those rules that requires that I restart my server, please do for me. So I'll just click on install, and that will start installing, and I'm just going to wait for this to be ready, and I will come back to you. And this is what I get after the feature installation. This is what I see. So what I would have to do is just to close this. Yeah, sometimes let me just show you something here. Export configuration. If I just click on this, that configuration, what this means is, if you have to install this same rule on another server, say you want to have 2, 3, 4, 5 server, depending on how complex your company is, you can just export this configuration and then import it on another server, and that will install this rule for you. And you can see here it says promote this server to a domain controller. Now we have installed the rule. Let me close this. As you can see, now I have ADDS. When you install any rule, you are going to see them here. So now this is the new rule I've installed, but then I'm not done yet. I still have some things to do. And what are those things? Let's see. So if I click on here, notification, you can see it's saying promote this server to a domain controller. So now we have installed the rule. We then need to promote it to a domain controller. So I'll just click promote this server to a domain controller. And now it's asking me to select the deployment operation. So it says add a domain controller to an existing domain. So if you have a domain controller in your company, you have a domain controller already, you are just trying to install another domain controller, so this is the option you are going to click on. The second option says add a new domain to an existing forest. So if you have a forest, and I'm going to explain that later as well, if you have a forest already, so you have a company, say a forest simply means you have created a company, say the company is in America, and now you have another branch of that company in London. What you can do is add a new domain controller to an existing forest, because you are now in London, you want to create a domain controller. So the domain controller you are going to be creating in London is going to be a child domain of your first domain controller, which is in America. So I'll explain that. We are going to do all this, but for now, because this is our first domain controller in our own forest, I will say add a new forest. Can you see that? Add a new forest. This is a new company. So specify the domain information for this operation. So I will name my company anif.com. Okay, that's the name of my company, and I'll click on next. So if I click on next, let's just wait for this. So it's going to take me to another page, and you can see deployment configuration is in process. So we just have to wait for this to do its thing. So this is how you promote a server to a domain controller. So, and this is the same way, if you remember, we went to manage and we do add roles and feature. If you want to install any other roles, that's the same process you have to just go through. So let me look for because I think that's ready now. I just have to look for it. This is it, and you can see it says select functional level of New Forest and root domain. So my server right now, if I click on here, you can see that I am on Windows Server 2016. Yeah, I am on Windows Server 2016. I want to see if I can see that somewhere. If I'm not seeing it here, I can go to system. I can go to system to show you. Let me quickly go to system, control. I want to go to control panel, and then system, and you can see I am on Windows Server 2016. This is it here. I am on Windows Server 2016, and that's why this is also showing me that Forest functional level is Windows Server 2016. Domain functional level is Windows Server 2016. At times, if you are working for a company where they have servers running Windows Server 2012 or Windows Server 2008, which are older, you want to say your Forest functional level, you want to bring it down for compatibility issues, but we are going to talk about that later. So let's leave it there as it is. We are going to specify domain controllers capabilities. So you can see here it says domain name system. These are things that will come with this, with promoting this server to a domain controller. You can see it's going to install this now. It's going to install DNS for me on this server because that role is needed, and it's going to make this domain controller the global catalog, and I'm going to talk about global catalog later as well. So but for now, let's just install domain controller and let's move on. So password here, I will set my password, my administrator password, to log in to the computer, and that password would always be there. Now you can see a delegation for these DNS server cannot be created because the authoritative parent zone. Forget about this. This is just telling you that this is your first domain. This is your first forest. So it's not getting information from another domain DNS. We'll get there. We'll get there. So here you just want to say next. And then this is going to be our NetBIOS domain name. This will do itself. So I should say Anif. And this is just what you need to do. But by the way, I would like to also mention, I think, let me finish this video. Let me finish this installation or promoting this to a domain controller before saying what comes to my mind now. So you can see Anif. If I click on next, so let's just wait for it. So what I was about to say is just that domain controller, if you are going to be working as a first line engineer or you are getting an entry job, domain controller would have already been installed for you. You are going to have a domain controller where you work. Well, the reason why I'm showing this is to just make sure you have the knowledge and you understand how to install a domain controller, because that's going to help you. That's going to help you a long way. So you know, you are not just going to be that IT person that when people are talking about the domain controller, you are scared. You've seen it, you have installed it yourself, you have worked on it yourself, you have created users on it yourself, you have changed password on it by yourself. So you would have done a lot of things on domain controller, so you won't be scared to go for interview. And even when you start working, when you see problems, you will be able to recognize where the problem is arising from. So that's why I'm showing all this. So let me just pause this video, wait for this to do its thing, and then I'll come back. And then this is what happens after every other thing, and you can see this is what matters to me. All prerequisite checks passed carefully. click install to begin installation, and this is install. But you can see there are yellow marks. That's fine, that has to be ignored as long as they are not red. If they are red, then you can do this, but yellow warning sign, that's fine. So just click install, and then the installation of our domain control promotion to a domain controller begins. So I'll just pause my video again, and then when this completes, I'll come back. And after some 5 to 3 minutes, that's what I saw. I was signed out and my server restarts itself. If you remember what I said, some rules, when you install them, when you install some rules, your server will restart itself. It is required. And when you do some, it is not required. So when promoting to domain controller, it's required that it restarts itself. So the server is restarting itself, and now we are going to have a domain controller in our environment when this is ready. I won't want to pause this video. I want you to see how this is going to come back on and how I'm going to log in so that we can take it from there. I'm trying not to waste so much of my time and your time watching this video. I want to make sure everything you need is just there, and then you just watch and understand. So I'm just going to pause this video as this is taking a while. So this is Group Policy Service. So that tells me that my domain controller is being installed, because Group Policy comes with domain controller, and with time I'm going to explain in another video when we get there what do we do with Group Policy. I'll wait for this video to be for this to do its thing, and then I'll come back. And after the restart, after my system restarted, this is what comes up. So I'm just going to log in to my system now, and then we take it from there. So I'm logged back into my server, and you can see the server manager is just coming up, and you can see again, we should see Active Directory Domain Services ADDS on this side, and you can see here that is there now. And then remember, I mentioned that DNS is going to be installed with this, and this is DNS. You can see right now, so we can say we have 3 rows installed on this server now. We have DNS is our DNS server right now. It is our Active Directory Domain Services server right now, and it is our File and Storage Services now. So File and Storage Services was installed with server when we installed our server from the beginning. But ADDS, when we were installing ADDS, then that brings DNS. So for you to know that everything is fine, you can go to Tools, and you are going to see Active Directory Administrative Center, Active Directory Domains and Trust, Active Directory Module. So all these active you can see here, that tells you the Active Directory Domain Services which we installed. These are the services. These are the services that comes with it. And you can see here we have DNS. Okay, we have DNS. So apart from DNS and everything that says active here, every other thing you see here, once you install a server, you are going to have them. Okay, you are going to have them. But active and DNS, those are the roles we have just installed. And we are going to work on Group Policy Management. So because we installed ADDS, that's why we have Group Policy Management as well. So that's how we promote a server to a domain controller. That's how we promote a server to a domain controller. And in my next video, I'm going to be showing us how do we create a user. How do we create a user? How do we manage them? How do we join computers to the domain? How do we join printers to the domain? How do we create folders in a domain or on a server, whereby we then give our users, our staff, access to those folders, to the printers, to whatever we've done. So that's what I'm going to be doing in the next video. Thank you for watching this video. And please do not forget to click like and subscribe, and ask your question under the comment section. I'll be very happy to answer them. Thank you very much and have a good day.